A prestigious black doctor boards a plane, excited to attend an important medical conference. He's worked his entire life for moments like this, respected, accomplished, admired. But as he settles into his first-class seat, a confrontation, bruise. A flight attendant approaches, her voice sharp and accusing. Passengers whisper, eyes dart, and tension crackles in the air. Within moments, he's ordered to leave first class. The humiliation is unbearable. But just as despair settles in, the captain's voice cuts through the cabin with an announcement that no one on that flight will ever forget. Dr. Anthony Carter had spent decades rising through the ranks of medicine. Born to working-class parents in the South, he knew the sting of discrimination early on. Teachers doubted him, neighbors underestimated him, but his determination never wavered. Through relentless study, sleepless nights, and sacrifices most could never imagine, he carved a path that led him to become one of the nation's most respected cardiologists. On that particular day, Dr. Carter wasn't just traveling, he was on his way to keynote a global conference on heart disease. His seat in first class wasn't indulgence, it was necessity. The conference organizers had insisted on it, ensuring he arrived rested and prepared for his life-changing presentation. As he checked in, everything seemed normal. Passengers hustled through security, gate agents smiled politely, and the rhythmic announcements filled the terminal. But once he boarded and took his seat, subtle glances began. Some passengers eyed him with surprise, as if questioning how a black man could sit comfortably in a space many considered exclusive. Still, Dr. Carter paid no attention. He opened his medical journal, adjusted his glasses, and prepared to review his notes. He had faced worse in life, and he wasn't about to let a few stares disrupt his focus. But then, a flight attendant appeared. Her smile was polite, but her tone carried something colder. She asked for his boarding pass again, her eyebrows raised, in suspicion. Dr. Carter calmly handed it over, but she pressed further, asking him to stand. Her words pierced like daggers. "This seat may not belong to you." And suddenly, the whispers grew louder. The cabin air thickened. Passengers leaned, closer, some in curiosity, others in judgment. The attendant's voice was now firmer, carrying authority. She explained that Dr. Carter's ticket appeared to be in error, and that he would need to relocate to economy. Dr. Carter's heart sank, not because he feared losing the seat, but because of what it represented. A lifetime of achievements, condensed into a single moment of public doubt. He had the receipt, the boarding pass, and the confirmation, but none of it seemed to matter. "Sir, you'll need to move." Her voice carried a finality that suggested she wasn't asking. Passengers began to form opinions. Some smirked, believing stereotypes. Others shifted uncomfortably, sensing injustice but unwilling to intervene. Dr. Carter, though calm, felt his chest tighten. He had endured years of academic scrutiny, board examinations, and countless nights saving lives in emergency rooms. Yet here he was, reduced to suspicion by nothing more than his skin color. He tried to reason, pointing again to his valid ticket. But the attendant shook her head, gesturing toward the back of the plane. It was as though his words evaporated in the pressurized air. By now, phones were raised. A few passengers began recording, capturing the tense exchange. Some whispered about lawsuits. Others muttered that he should just move. One man in the next row sneered, saying under his breath, "First class isn't for everyone." The humiliation burned. But Dr. Carter stayed composed. Years in medicine had taught him the value of patience under pressure. Still, the injustice gnawed at him. He wondered how many others had endured the same silent wounds. Then, just as the situation seemed to reach a breaking point, the plane door closed. The flight attendant repeated her demand, insisting that he vacate the seat before takeoff. Dr. Carter looked around. No ally stepped forward. He realized he was alone, exposed before strangers who now judged his worthiness. But then, before he could respond further, a sudden chime echoed through the cabin speakers. The captain's voice, calm yet commanding, filled the plane. Ladies and gentlemen, before we depart, I need to address something important. Every head turned. The tension tightened. Dr. Carter braced himself, the captain's voice cut through the cabin with undeniable authority. It has come to my attention that a passenger in first class has been questioned regarding his right to be here. His words hung in the air, heavy and deliberate. Passengers froze. The attendant stiffened, her face pale. The captain continued, "For clarity, Dr. Anthony Carter is not only a first-class passenger with a valid ticket, but also a distinguished cardiologist, traveling as our guest of honor." Gasps rippled through the cabin. Phones stopped recording and hands lowered in shame. A few passengers exchanged guilty looks, realizing their quiet complicity. But the captain wasn't finished. His tone sharpened. "We will not tolerate discrimination on this aircraft. Every passenger deserves dignity, respect, and fairness. If anyone finds that unacceptable, you are free to deboard now." The silence was deafening. Not a single person moved. The flight attendant shifted uncomfortably, her once confident posture crumbling. Dr. Carter sat tall, his chest rising with quiet strength. He hadn't spoken a word, yet the captain's defense had given him back the dignity stripped away moments earlier. Passengers who had doubted him now avoided his gaze. Others leaned back, ashamed. One young woman mouthed, "I'm sorry," across the aisle, her face flushed with regret. In that instant, power shifted. The humiliation that had clung to Dr. Carter transformed into vindication. He hadn't just kept his seat. He had made a silent stand against the subtle but brutal ways racism attempts to diminish even the most accomplished lives. As the engines roared to life and the plane began taxiing, the weight of the moment lingered. No announcement about seatbelts or flight time could overshadow what had just unfolded. The flight eventually smoothed into quiet. Passengers settled, but the memory of the confrontation refused to fade. Dr. Carter opened his journal again, though now his thoughts were less about medicine and more about the silent lessons etched into the air. He hadn't chosen that moment. He hadn't asked to become a symbol, but once again, like countless black professionals before him, he was forced to carry the weight of proving his worth in spaces where he rightfully belonged. Later, as the plane landed and passengers filed out, some paused to speak. A few offered apologies, stumbling over their words. Others avoided him altogether, unwilling to confront their silence, but one older man stopped, his voice low. "Thank you for staying calm. You showed us what strength really looks like." Dr. Carter simply nodded. Strength, he knew, wasn't just about surviving the operating room or delivering lectures. It was about facing injustice with grace, even when the world demanded submission. In the days that followed, the story spread online. Clips from the flight surfaced, sparking outrage, debate, and reflection. Thousands weighed in, some condemning the incident, others recognizing their own quiet complicity in moments of everyday racism. But for Dr. Carter, the lesson was clear. No matter how far you rise, prejudice can still try to pull you down. What matters is how you rise again. And so the story leaves us with a question. How many moments like this go unseen, unheard, and unchallenged? And more importantly, will we have the courage to speak when silence is easier? Because sometimes, justice doesn't come from grand gestures or courtroom battles. Sometimes it comes from a single voice in the right place at the right time, reminding us that dignity isn't a privilege, it's a right.